You do not believe what you think you believe. Not because you are dishonest, and not because you are incapable of reason, but because belief rarely begins where we imagine it begins. Most people picture belief as a clean sequence. You encounter evidence, you evaluate it, you reach a conclusion, and then you defend that conclusion because it is true. That is the ideal model. It is elegant, rational, reassuring. But psychologically, the order is often reversed. Long before we begin evaluating arguments, we are already situated inside a world. We inherit language, we absorb loyalties, we learn what earns approval and what triggers rejection. We sense which positions are safe and which are costly. Before we reason, we belong. For most of human history, belonging was not a luxury. It was survival. To be expelled from the group was to be exposed, vulnerable, cut off from protection. The human nervous system evolved under those conditions. It learned to treat social threat as physical threat. And so the mind developed a quiet bias. Protect cohesion first, justify later. Modern psychology calls this motivated reasoning. Scripture described the pattern thousands of years ago in narrative form. In the book of Genesis, the serpent does not overwhelm Eve with data. There is no technical debate about biology or mortality. There is a question. Did God really say? It is subtle. It introduces ambiguity, not about the fruit itself, but about authority. Then comes the reframing. You will not surely die. And more importantly, you will be like God. Notice what changes. The fruit does not change. The command does not change. The structure of reality does not visibly change. What changes is identity. The issue shifts from obedience to autonomy, from trust to self-definition, from receiving boundaries to defining them. Psychologically, that shift is decisive. The temptation is not primarily about taste or curiosity. It is about who gets to determine what is good, who defines reality, who you are allowed to become. Once that identity frame shifts, the act follows almost naturally. And after the act comes explanation. Blame redistributes. Narratives form. The serpent deceived me. The woman you gave me. The movement, however, began earlier, in the reframing of allegiance. The same pattern appears again in the story of Saul in 1 Samuel. Saul receives a clear command. He acts against it. When confronted, he does not immediately confess rebellion. He explains, "The people spared the best of the sheep. It was for sacrifice." The justification arrives fully formed, but the deeper driver is visible in his fear. When Samuel turns to leave, Saul grabs his robe. He is not arguing theology. He is clinging to position, to status, to the identity of kingship slipping away. His actions reveal that preserving identity felt more urgent than preserving obedience. Decision first. Explanation second. The crowd dynamic in the Gospels reveals the same structure at scale. A crowd can shout, "Hosanna," as Jesus enters Jerusalem, and, within days, demand crucifixion. It is tempting to assume that dramatic new evidence must have appeared. But often what shifts more rapidly than facts is social alignment. Authority reconfigures. Pressure intensifies. The cost of loyalty changes. Moral certainty feels absolute in both moments because belief is fused to belonging. If belief were purely informational, disagreement would dissolve with enough data. It does not. Facts frequently strengthen prior commitments. Challenges feel personal, even when framed politely. Why? Because when a belief is entangled with identity, questioning it feels like questioning the self, and the brain does not distinguish cleanly between intellectual threat and social threat. This mechanism is not inherently malicious. It is protective. It kept tribes coherent. It preserved cohesion in dangerous environments. The problem is not that it exists. The problem is that it now operates in a world saturated with information, amplified by systems that constantly reinforce identity. Digital environments reward alignment. They sort us into tribes of millions. They repeat our language back to us. They signal applause when we conform and outrage when we deviate. Under those conditions, belief can harden into armor. Armor protects, but it also restricts movement. The heavier it becomes, the more exhausting it is to carry. Over time, the effort required to defend a position can exceed the effort required to examine it. yet examination feels more threatening than defense. The serpent's strategy in Genesis was not to dismantle evidence piece by piece, it was to reframe identity. Modern influence works the same way. If you want to shift belief, you rarely begin by attacking facts. You begin by redefining who someone is. People like you think this way. People like them think that way. Once identity is secured, arguments assemble themselves. Doubt becomes betrayal. Consistency becomes loyalty. The critical question, then, is not whether you are intelligent enough to evaluate evidence. It is whether your convictions could survive social cost. If a belief isolated you from your environment, threatened your status, or strained your relationships, would it remain intact? Or would it quietly adjust to preserve coherence? Scripture repeatedly frames human failure not as lack of information, but as misplaced allegiance. A shift in authority, a shift in who defines reality. From Eden to Saul to the crowd in Jerusalem, the pattern echoes. A reframing occurs. Identity adjusts. Action follows. Justification seals it. Today that process scales at extraordinary speed. Headlines, feeds, applause, outrage. Each one nudges identity. Conviction can feel like clarity, but sometimes it is choreography, the echo of an environment repeated until it sounds like independent thought. None of this means every belief is false. It means belief is rarely untouched by belonging. The discomfort you feel when a conviction is challenged may not indicate that you are wrong. It may indicate that something deeper is being protected. Removing identity from belief feels like exposure, like stepping into uncertainty without the reassurance of a tribe. But that exposure can be revealing. It shows where allegiance rests. It reveals what must remain intact at all costs. You do not believe what you think you believe. You believe what allows you to remain coherent within your world. The question is not whether that is human. It is. The question is whether you are aware of the mechanism while it is operating. Because the most powerful reframing is not the one imposed on you by others. It is the one you never recognize inside yourself. And once you see it, you face a choice. Protect the armor, or examine what lies beneath it.